All right, so I am now in the loader side of the vehicle, and I wish I had a seat. I guess it's just removed from in here, but even then it's kind of squished.
No, they weren't. There was no no seat. Yeah,
it's corrected. Well, it's squat corrected because no seat. So get the ammo from the bins. There aren't very many ready rounds here.
Well, with the Osprey G, they introduced a 2-round foldable rack, which was loose. So there was a number of those 2-round racks sitting around on the floor in convenient locations.
Well, that sounds safe.
Well, that's the way they did it.
Well, so looking at it, some of the ammunition I see is stowed forward behind the driver. There's some in the hull side here, and there's some in the sponson sides, where it's the exact same position that, say, Sherman's kept their ammo. And so Sherman's got this Tommy Cooker reputation. Was there a nickname for the Panzer IV?
No, I've never heard of one.
The gun we have a great view of right now, and you've got all the markings. So obviously built 1942 and CXP. What's a CXP?
That's the 3-letter code that designates the manufacturer.
Oh.
Each factory had its own 3-letter code, and there's a big fat code book that you can look up and find out who made the part.
So if a part breaks down, you know who to shoot?
Well, you know where it came from, and you can go back and you can claim under warranty for it not working.
These things came with a warranty?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
How many thousand miles and how many thousand shots?
Yeah. These are absolutely commercially produced vehicles. It was none of this. This is not state sponsored. They're commercial firms win the contracts and supply the parts, and the assembler puts it all together.
Okay, well, moving back to the gun, because that's why we're here, of course. I see a recoil gauge with fire pause. Stop shooting.
Yes. Well, each time the gun fires, the buffers heat up and the hydraulic fluid in them deteriorates. After a certain length of time, the gun is starting to recoil further and further. When it gets to the point where that marker gets back to 4 pause, that's the time when they have to stop firing and do something about it.
Right, the ammunition. So there are 80 rounds of ammunition scattered around this vehicle. That's with the short.
Yes.
The short ammunition as well as the short gun. Then it goes up when they go to the bigger gun and the bigger ammunition to 87. Yes. How do you do that?
Well, they were a bit more careful in how they laid out the bins around the side, so they got some extra space there. But also they were carrying these 2-round collapsible ones that I mentioned earlier.
As you move forward, I'm seeing the what do you call it?
Yeah,
compensator. Oh, compensator in German?
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you look on the outside of this vehicle, the gun sticks out a very long way compared to how short the breech part is.
Yeah.
And that's precisely, so it's basically a big spring.
To hold the gun in a level position.
Okay. To the right of the gun is the coaxial machine gun, an MG34. They started off, the Panzer I had MG13s, and they moved to the 34 when?
About 1938, the 34 would have been available, but it wouldn't have been in general use on armoured vehicles. And about 1938, they started to use on some vehicles the MG34s, and then about 1941, they stopped using the drum feeds. They had special 5-round drums, which were not normal outside a vehicle. Right. They were using those up till about 1941, and then they went over to the belted ones with the Gurtsaka, with the bags. So they could put a bag with the belt in it.
150 or so, give or take. Right, and the last thing is on the right-hand side, a lot of vision blocks, I have to say, and another pistol port. So obviously, pistol ports everywhere there. I guess they wanted the gunners to use their pistols a lot. Optics everywhere. An optic front right for the loader to see out. It's very nice of them to put a big optic for the loader to see out forwards as to what's coming at them.
But the reason they got rid of the ports on the front of the turret was actually from an armour protection point of view. You can make a stronger front plate by taking that pistol.
Taking the hole out.
Taking the hole out.
and the auxiliary manual traverse, which you have to push in to engage, and then you can help out the poor old gunner if your motor is dead.
2.6 times the slower than the electric traverse.
Right, so I have moved into what I would ordinarily call the bow gunner's position. Some folks might call it the assistant driver's position. Germans, no.
They call it the Funker.
Radioman, which I guess shows the emphasis that the Germans had on radios. That's very long-standing. Where did they learn that?
They've been experimenting with radios right from the beginning of the concept of blitzkrieg to control large formations of armor. But in fact, because radios were very specialized, very expensive, most tanks only had a receiver until this period, 1941 onwards, they started to include a sender as well as a receiver. 3 rack here. On the top you have the sender and receiver, and on the bottom you have another receiver.
So you could listen to both channels at the same time?
Yeah.
And so would the radio man be primarily responsible for transmitting and taking notes, or is he just making sure it's tuned correctly?
He's transmitting and receiving and passing the information on the intercom back and forward to the commander.
I'm a little bit squished in here. The transmission is not up the middle of the axis. They've shoved it off to the right. Any idea why? No. Except to make the poor bow gunner unhappy. Sorry, Funker unhappy. And it is not a small transmission. ZF, correct? How do you get it out? I mean, you can't put a crane to lift this thing.
No, but they had special tools for guiding the transmission out through that front hatch.
Like jacks and...
Yeah, well, you would have split the casing here and taken this part out and undone it up there. You certainly weren't going to be taking the whole Aufbau superstructure off.
But then there were some tanks that they still had to do that.
Yes, there are ones that you have to do that, but you
Tiger.
don't. Yeah.
So my big steering brakes are in front of me. Oh, I see this pipe that we were talking about earlier that takes the fumes out. And the machine gun again, another MG34,
yes.
Common system, and he's got an optic of his own there.
Yes.
It's a by 1.8, unlike the by 2.5 that the gunner had. And you use your head to aim it, so again, it's a bit like the Panther. Single piece hatch up at the top, and he does have an escape hatch directly below him. And it's not too small, actually. It's the size of a good New York pizza, I'd say. There you go. I don't know if Germans knew what a good New York pizza was back then, but there we go.
500 millimeter diameter.
There we go. So there is a lever back here for stowing the radio antenna. Some of the German tanks I've noticed have a guard on the gun for the radio antenna, and then all of a sudden it dropped. Do we know why?
Yes. They originally were concerned that the long guns would damage the antennas when they traversed to the right-hand side. So the extra guard underneath the gun would push the antenna down out of the way because the antenna is spring-loaded. But they overcame all of that because they took the antenna and permanently mounted it at the tail end of the vehicle on the left side on a rubber base mount.
And that was the end of that.
That was the end of that, yeah. Until they ran out of rubber, and then they had to have a steel base mount with a spring in it.
Rubber does seem to be one of the big sticking points.
Major problem. They had undercapacity of rubber, and rubber eventually was to be only used for things that couldn't be done effectively with any other medium. So gradually they were replacing any wheels that could be like the return rollers could be a steel roller. They could get away with that, and then they were introducing steel tired road wheels where the rubber was still there, but it was inside the wheel where it was protected and lasted longer.
Well, outside of that, as I say, I suspecting that the seat that I'm in, which is a post-war modification that the Panzer apparently threw in just to keep people happy, maybe it's health and safety because it's a comfortable seat with the back, is a little bit further back than it ordinarily would be. So my feet are basically stuck. It's a bit like the Panther, in a very narrow section in between the transmission and the steering final drive brake system. Not much else in the radio's position. We have found one of the little interior dome lights in between there. There is usually a lot more, of course, inside these tanks, but when was the last time you saw a perfectly restored German tank? The Panther, granted. But,
I can show you a few of them.
Touche. Okay. You probably know where they all are as well, and they all know you. Do you have a favorite?
Favorite?
Yeah. What's your favorite German tank? Here.
My favorite one is the Jagdpanther.
Why?
I just think it's a nice one, but that's the only thing. And my ex-colleague, late colleague, Walter Spielberger, spent his last few weeks before he was captured by the Americans in a Jagdpanther.
It's a huge vehicle. I mean, look at it next to the Panzer, and it's like it dwarfs it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we can come back to Panthers at another point. So we've been rabbiting on long enough. I'm going to have a quick look at the driver's hole, and then we'll be out of here. And finally, the driver's position. This is lovely. I had the same thing with the Panzer III. This is a very comfortable and usable position. I am a little bit offset. The hatch is off to the left, which definitely means that I can't drive head out. But I got the 3 pedals, clutch, brake, accelerator, 2 very large tillers, and a 6-speed on the right with a reverse. Why didn't they do automatics?
They did for the Panzer III. So the Ausführung E, F and G of the Panzer III had a pre-selector automatic gearbox.
That's handy enough. The view out. So I got this large optic to my front with the armored shutter, and it's frozen in place, and a replaceable view box, and this periscope system. So I presume you have a periscope here, and this slides over to the left.
You slide it over to the left, and you've got a binocular optic device. There's 2 small holes in the top of the front plate there, through which the periscope operates. It's a KFF2 is its designation, and it gives the gunner a chance, or the driver a chance, to see out of the vehicle while the vehicle is closed up in combat.
So some of the German vehicles I noticed, they went with 2 small holes in the turret and they went down to 1. I presume that was because there was an extra weak point?
No, they redesigned the optics for a single.
That was an improvement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can
originally had binocular optics.
The dash is wonderfully simple. Easy to read. There is a green section, which presumably is good, and a red section, which you probably want to avoid.
Yes.
The speedometer, 100 kilometers an hour. Optimistic. Was there a speed record for a German tank? What was the fastest German tank?
Well, it wasn't a Panzer IV, that's for sure.
They fell off a cliff.
It would have been some of the ones with the rubber-tired track, like a half-track.
So I have another dome light here. There's one to my front as well. Fuel tanks. Temperature, a lovely simple start and off, and an ignition key. I don't know if that was original or not, but it's actually.
Oh, they had an ignition key, yes.
It was actually a key, so you had the key to the tank.
Yes.
And would it operate any tank? Would it only operate that one tank?
It had a little tag on it, which had the chassis number.
What did you do if you lost the key? I mean, it's a battle.
Well,
I'm sorry, I can't start the tank. I've lost the key.
Well, then you run away quick.
Can you hotwire?
From both sides, because your own guys are going to be after you.
So, other things in here, as I said, I've moved over a little bit, so my legs have plenty of room. Manual transmission on the right. On the left, you can see part of the bogie, which comes down and into the angle of the hull. And this is because the bogey is underneath as well. It sort of supports
It's
the
more
weight.
reinforcing for the position where the bogey is mounted.
Stop it from flexing.
Yeah.
And of course, there is an ammunition rack directly behind me. As I go around, there is another vision port on the left for the driver. Did that always stay? They didn't get rid of that one.
No,
did
they got rid of that. Once the Schutzen came in, there was no point. You couldn't see
That's a
past the
fair point,
Schutzen.
And we have a mounting point here for a big circular thing, which I would have thought would be the speedo, but it's obviously not.
No, it's a gyro compass because they could navigate their tanks on like a ship.
It'll be handy in the desert. I mean,
Yes,
especially
or
in the
in
desert.
Russia or anywhere where there's open spaces. You went on a course. You were given your coordinates and your course, and off you went.
You know how accurate it was? I mean, obviously it was accurate enough to put it in.
Oh yeah, and it's on Panthers and Tigers as well.
And so we have completed our tour around the Panzer IV. Time to close up. But what was the overall opinion of the troops using the Panzer IV? Did they prefer, let's say, I preferred my old Panzer III, it was simpler, or I preferred the Panther, it was bigger? Or?
I've never seen any general complaints about it. But the Germans always produced the Erfahrungsberichte, which were reports about their experiences. So one of the tasks of an officer was to report on what experience they had, but that was always rather detailed. They would say, like the comments about the vision slits and so forth, that we don't use those anymore, so it's a waste of time having them, and there were minor little details like that.
Production ran from 37 to 45.
Yes.
12, just shy of 1,300 of these G models and 9,000 all told. So that's basically the most numerous German vehicle of the war, armored vehicle.
There would have been more Sturmgeschütz, yeah. But yeah, that and the Sturmgeschütz are the similar ones.
All right, so Germany surrenders. Oh dear, no more Panzer IVs, except they continue seeing service until the 60s. The end of the Panzer IV service life, though, came in Syria, correct?
Yes.
All right, so 1967, these things are bunkers, or are they still mobile and operating?
The Czech army had at least 150 in service, if not more. But I have details of at least 150, and I have never seen any evidence of anything but Czech ones out in Syria.
So they were still functioning around?
Yes, and well, they were given new guns because Skoda was making the guns. The guns were being supplied by Skoda anyway. And Skoda went on making the guns, so they got new guns. They got all sorts of minor changes. The track guards get changed to Czech-style track guards, and lighting systems and so forth get changed. But other than that,
so this is a vehicle that basically had a service life in excess of 30 years.
yes.
That's impressive. Well, we'll call it a bit of an end here. If you're curious, that last Panzer IV that was killed, 10th of June 1967, was ironically enough killed by an Israeli Sherman. Hilary, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Great pleasure. Hope you found this tour a little bit different. If you're looking for more of the technical stuff, well, okay, I'm sorry, but you can look up a lot of it online anyway. I'll see you on the next one. Greetings! Just a reminder, if you are not yet a player of World of Tanks, the free game, because it's not going to cost you anything to try it out, have a look at the text description below the video here. Download it, try it out, let us know if you like it. That was it. See you on the next one.